Listen, everything about today's teaching depends on one thing: command. Whether what I am about to lay out for you becomes ego inflation, or whether it becomes the actual uncovering of the God Self that the title is pointing at, will be decided by one factor: whether you, as a soul moving through this body, can hold what these techniques put into the room without flinching, without claiming, and without collapsing. The library trusted me to teach this carefully. These techniques produced practitioners that the institutions could not manage, and the institutions chose suppression as the response. You feel that. A practitioner who builds the God Self steps outside the intermediary economy, and the intermediary economy needs the practitioner inside it to keep eating. The bands tracked the kind of practitioner the work produced, an autonomous one. The techniques themselves were workable. The practitioners were a problem. Suppression followed. We have spoken on this channel before about band techniques from the Vajrayana tradition. The charnel groundwork, the midnight rituals, the cutting practices. Today we walk a different stream, the Nath Siddha lineage of northern India, and the inner alchemy of the 6 yogas that came out of the Naropa current in the Tibetan high passes. Different sources, different techniques, same destination. The inner room where the God Self has been seated the entire time, waiting for the practitioner to finish the room enough to recognize who is sitting in it. Comment the word seat if a spine prickle went down your back when I said God Self. All right, back into it. 49 minutes. Why does the title say 49 minutes? 49 carries weight in the inner traditions. 7 multiplied by itself. 49 days for the Tibetan bardo, the in-between state where one form has ended and the next has not yet stabilized. 49 matches the 7 inner pillars, the Nath Siddhas mapped along the central channel of this body. 49 minutes, then, lands as symbolic. The length of the in-between, where what you have been ends and what you are becoming has not yet finished its construction. 49 minutes is the length of a sit, of a session, of a chamber entry, where the old self has stepped out and the God Self has been given enough quiet to begin to show. Today I will walk you into the chamber, into the actual inner architecture that the Nath Siddhas, the Tibetan high yogis, the trika masters, and the deeper currents of every direct contact tradition have been describing for over 1,000 years as the place where the God Self resides. The chamber holds 4 objects: the seat, the lamp, the mirror, the silent witness. Each object gets installed by a specific class of inner technique, and each class of technique has, at some point, been suppressed by an institution that could not tolerate the practitioner the technique produced. We are going to walk through each object slowly, with pressure. And by the end, you will know why what you have called you, your entire life, has been 4 objects mistaken for a single self. And you will know why the God Self stays uncovered, not built, uncovered when the 4 objects stop being mistaken for who you, as a soul, actually are. Hear me on why these techniques got banned. The institutions banned them because they worked too well, and the practitioner that emerged was outside the institutional economy. The Nath Siddhas got pushed, in waves, by the orthodox Brahmin establishment of medieval India, because the Naths taught direct contact with the ultimate reality through the body, with no priesthood, no caste, no temple required. A Nath who completed his work could sit at the cave mouth with no temple behind him and no priest in front of him, and the temple economy could not feed off him. So the lineage got driven into the margins, into the wilderness, into the half-mythical territory where modern scholars still argue about which Nath was a historical man and which one was a deity who walked. The Naropa stream of the Tibetan tradition went through a similar containment. The 6 inner techniques of that current, the inner heat, the illusory body, the dream practice, the clear light recognition, the in-between work, and the transfer of consciousness, landed so direct, so unmediated, so capable of producing the God Self in a single lifetime, that the institutional Buddhism that came up around them had to put walls around them. First, the walls of secrecy, then the walls of prerequisite, then the walls of vow. Eventually, the technique sat so wrapped in institutional gates that a practitioner could spend 20 years in a monastery and see the techniques only in fragments. The techniques themselves stayed safe for the practitioner. The techniques threatened the monastery's revenue. The walls protected the monastery. Hear me clearly on this, because the hidden agreement underneath the bands matters more than the bands themselves. The hidden agreement says, the techniques were hidden because they would let me bypass discipline. That agreement is wrong. The techniques got hidden because they would let the practitioner bypass the institution. The discipline was always the floor on which the techniques could be safely received. The institution made itself the gate. The discipline got bundled with the gate so that the gate could look like the floor. That bundling is the old institutional sleight of hand, and the library is undoing it for you right now. The banning sat on the readiness, not on the doing. On who got to be ready, and on who got to be the one who decides who is ready. The techniques themselves stayed available to a body that had been prepared. The institutions made themselves the preparation. A practitioner who tried to prepare outside the institution would be branded a heretic, a wild yogi, a wandering siddha, a transgressor. Today, the library walks you into the chamber where the techniques live, and the library does it without an institutional cost. No fee, no vow, no secret handshake, just the actual architecture. The test of whether you are ready is the test that has always been the test. Can you receive this with the small self staying out of the way of the recognition? That test stays in place. The library keeps the test in place. We just refuse to charge admission for hearing the test stated clearly. Let me give you the bigger frame before we walk in. The chamber is not in some other realm. The chamber is in this body of yours, right now, as you listen to me. The inner architecture the Naths mapped along the central channel runs from the base of your spine up through the crown of your head, and the 4 objects sit along that line, not as physical objects in a physical chamber, but as functions of awareness that have been operating, partially, your whole life, and which can be brought to full installation through specific classes of inner work. When the realized lineages talk about the inner chamber, they are talking about a real configuration of awareness in a real body, not a metaphor. A configuration, one that the body, when given the right work, can carry. The first object in the chamber is the seat. The seat is the place where the practitioner sits, not the cushion under the body, but the inner posture of awareness that holds steady when the body moves, when the mind moves, when the day moves. The Nath Siddhas built this first, because without the seat, none of the other objects can be installed. The seat is the steadiness of attention that holds against sensation, thought, emotion, and external event. The techniques that build the seat are the techniques of containment, the inner heat practices that the Tibetan stream calls the inner fire, the breath-holding practices that the Naths called the inner seal, and the postural disciplines that hold the body still long enough for the attention to learn its own steadiness. In the inner alchemy traditions, the seat is described as being located along the central channel of the body, the energetic axis that runs from the base of the spine up through the crown. The seat is not at any one point along that axis. The seat is the whole axis becoming available as a single vertical line of awareness. When the seat is installed, the practitioner can sit with the body still, and the attention will rest along the central line, holding its own ground without being pulled outward into the sensory field or downward into the appetite field. The attention sits. The attention has a place. The seat. The seat-building techniques got suppressed because a practitioner with an installed seat carries no institutional need. The seat is internal. The seat is portable. The seat travels with the body that holds it. A practitioner who can sit at the cave mouth on the seat for hours without losing the line, that practitioner can step away from any temple. The institutions, especially the ones that built their economies around external objects of devotion, suppressed the spread of that capacity. So the seat-building techniques got pushed into the lineage transmission, gated by the master, and only opened to those who had proven themselves loyal to the institution that held the gate. That stands as one of the deepest suppressions, the suppression by gating. Now, the body laboratory of the seat. Hear me on this. A practitioner who has the seat installed can sit still for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, with the attention resting along the central axis, without the body needing to fidget, without the mind needing to escape, without the breath needing to be regulated. The body becomes a stable instrument. The mind becomes a quiet ground. And in the sitting, something else gets the chance to come forward. The seat is the foundation. The seat is the prerequisite for everything else. A practitioner who tries to install the lamp, the mirror, or the witness without the seat in place will collapse because the inner architecture requires the floor to hold the weight of the upper rooms. The body sign that the seat is being built is the gradual lengthening of the period the attention can rest on a single point, breath, sensation, posture, without being pulled away. At first, the attention rests for 30 seconds and slips. Then, a minute. Then, 3. Then, 10. Then the whole sit. The slippage decreases. The return becomes faster. The body, which used to resist stillness with small fidgets, settles into the stillness as if the stillness were a posture the body had always wanted. That is the seat coming online. Slowly, across weeks and months, the realized masters did not rush this work. They sat, and sat, and sat, and the seat installed itself as the body learned what stillness required. The failure mode for the seat, the way practitioners go wrong with this object, is to mistake bodily stillness for installed attention. A practitioner can hold the body still for an hour and have the attention scattered across 40 different thoughts the entire time. The body looks like it is sitting. The attention is at the office, at the relationship, at the unfinished task, at the unfinished argument, at tomorrow's anxiety, at last week's regret. The body is sitting. The seat is not installed. A practitioner who does not catch this difference can spend years on the cushion and never build the seat. The library wants you to catch it. The seat lives in the attention, in the central axis being held by the awareness. Body stillness alone does not install the seat. Body stillness with attention along the axis, that is the actual work. The second object in the chamber is the lamp. The lamp is the inner light that the contemplative traditions have been pointing at for thousands of years, a real quality of inner luminosity that becomes visible to the practitioner when the seat is steady enough for the inner field to stop being agitated. The lamp is what the Tibetan tradition calls clear light, what the Nath Siddhas call the inner sun, what the Trika tradition calls prakasha, the self-luminous awareness that is always already shining inside the field of consciousness, and that becomes visible when the field stops being whipped around by external input. The techniques that install the lamp are the techniques of refinement. The inner heat practices that the Naropa stream perfected, where the practitioner generates an inner fire at the navel center and lets that fire purify the channels above it, are the most direct installations of the lamp on record. The trika visualization practices that hold the inner field steady on a single point of light until the visualization stops being a visualization and starts being a recognition. Those install the lamp. The nath practices of breath retention with internal locks, where the breath is held inside specific energetic gates until the inner field begins to glow on its own. Those install the lamp. Different methods, same object. The lamp comes online. The inner field becomes visible to itself. The practitioner discovers that the awareness was always luminous. The input had just been keeping the lamp behind the screen. The lamp got banned because a practitioner who can see the lamp carries no need for an external image of the divine to direct their devotion toward. The lamp is inside. The lamp is yours. The lamp does not require a priest to light it. The institutions that built their economies around being the light keepers could not tolerate practitioners who carried their own lamp. So the lamp installing techniques got wrapped in secrecy, in prerequisite, in oath. The institutional framing said, if you receive this without the prerequisites, you will go insane. Sometimes that was true. Often it was institutional self-protection wearing the costume of caution. The library tells you the honest version. Some of the prerequisites were real, and many of them were institutional gates. A modern practitioner with steadiness, with self-honesty, with a willingness to slow down, can install the lamp without the institutional theater. The floor still matters. Build the floor honestly. The body sign that the lamp is coming online is a subtle, sustained luminosity behind the closed eyes, as quality, not as image. The mind feels lit from inside, even in a dark room. The breath feels lined with something warm. The chest feels open without needing anything to prop it open. If you have had moments of this in deep meditation, you have touched the lamp. The work is to extend the touch into a residence. A practitioner who has felt the lamp once will recognize the texture. A practitioner who has installed the lamp lives inside the texture. The texture stops being an event and starts being a baseline of the inner field. The failure mode for the lamp is to chase the visual experience of inner light instead of recognizing the actual luminosity of awareness. A practitioner can produce inner visual fireworks, flashes, colors, geometric patterns through hard concentration practice and mistake the fireworks for the lamp. The fireworks belong to the perception layer. The lamp belongs to the awareness itself. The fireworks come and go. The lamp, once installed, becomes a steady quality of the inner field with no spectacle attached. A practitioner chasing fireworks will spend years generating impressive inner phenomena without ever installing the actual lamp. The library wants you to catch this difference too. The lamp is quiet. The lamp is steady. The lamp is not a show. The third object in the chamber is the mirror. The mirror is the inner reflection that lets the practitioner see what is in their own field of awareness, with no identification with what they see. The mirror is what the trika tradition calls the recognition function, the capacity to look at a thought, an emotion, a sensation, an impulse, and to see it as content moving through awareness, separate from the awareness itself. The Nath Siddhas built this object through the discrimination practices, the disciplines of watching the field, naming what arises, and holding ground when what arises tries to move the awareness. The Naropa stream installs the mirror through the illusory body practice, where the practitioner trains the mind to see all phenomena, including the body, as appearance arising in awareness with no solidification into anything that could be defended. The mirror is what allows the practitioner to look at the inner field, the seat, the lamp, the emotions, the desires, the fears, the impulses, and see all of it as content moving across a reflective surface, with the surface staying distinct from the content. When the mirror is installed, the practitioner can sit with a strong emotion and watch the emotion as whether passing across the field of awareness, with the awareness staying clear underneath. The mirror counts among the most suppressed objects in the institutional history of the inner traditions, because a practitioner with an installed mirror cannot be manipulated by fear, guilt, shame, hope, or any of the other emotional levers that institutions have historically used to keep practitioners obedient. The mirror dissolves the lever. Fear becomes weather. Guilt becomes weather. Shame becomes weather. The institutional economy of fear prayer cannot function inside a practitioner who has an installed mirror. So the mirror building techniques got banned, gated, restricted, and in some cases burned out of the surviving texts. The body sign that the mirror is coming online is the moment when a strong emotion arises and you, as a soul moving through this body, can watch the emotion arise, move, and pass without being swept. The emotion stays uncolored by suppression. The emotion gets seen. Seeing is the function. Reflection. Not avoidance, not detachment, direct reflection of what is moving through the field, with the field staying intact under the movement. The first time a practitioner experiences this with an emotion that used to flatten them, grief, rage, terror, the experience itself becomes the proof that the mirror is being installed. The emotion came. The emotion was full. The emotion moved. The awareness watched. The awareness stayed clear. The mirror reflected. Comment, one word, seat, lamp, mirror, or witness, for the object most underdeveloped in you right now. All right, back into it. The failure mode for the mirror is dissociation dressed in spiritual vocabulary. A practitioner can train themselves to feel emotionally distant from their own life, call that distance the witness state, and mistake the dissociation for the installed mirror. Dissociation flattens the emotion. The mirror reflects the emotion in full color while keeping the awareness clear. Big difference. A dissociated practitioner does not feel the grief. An installed mirror practitioner feels the grief completely and is not swept by it. The library wants you to catch this difference because the dissociation failure mode is one of the most common in modern spiritual practice. Practitioners spend years thinking they are reflecting when they are actually numbing. The proof of the mirror is the full color of the emotion and the steady clarity of the awareness, both at the same time. The fourth object, and this is where the chamber finishes, is the silent witness. The silent witness is the awareness that is aware of the seat, the lamp, and the mirror, while remaining none of them. The silent witness is what every direct contact tradition has been pointing at when they talk about the ultimate reality, as the unconditioned awareness in which all objects, including the inner ones, arise. The silent witness is what the Mahasiddhas were realizing when they crossed past the seeming duality of practitioner and practice. The silent witness is what the Trika tradition recognizes in the recognition itself, the awareness that is aware of being aware, with no further regress. The techniques that bring the silent witness forward are the techniques of dissolution. The Tibetan clear-like practice, where the practitioner trains to recognize the awareness inside deep sleep, inside the moment of falling asleep, inside the moment of waking. Those are silent witness practices. The Nath practices of sustained inner stillness, where the practitioner holds the inner field empty for hours at a time until the awareness recognizes itself as the field rather than the content. Those are silent witness practices. The Mahasiddha realization stories, where the master, in a single moment, transmitted the recognition of the witness to a disciple who had been preparing for years. Those are silent witness transmissions. The silent witness sits outside the reach of any ban. The techniques that bring it forward have been heavily restricted, but the witness itself is what the techniques were always pointing toward. A practitioner who recognizes the silent witness needs no further institutional support. No teacher, no master, no priest, no temple, no scripture, no ritual, no doctrine. The witness becomes the contact. Everything else falls away. The institutional economy collapses inside a single recognized witness. So the institutions, across centuries, did everything they could to ensure that the techniques that brought the witness forward got handed only to practitioners who had been thoroughly bound to the institution first. The body sign for the silent witness is harder to describe than the others because the silent witness does not appear as a sensation. The silent witness appears as the steady, quiet, unmoving sense that something is here that does not get affected by anything, by the body's state, by the mind's content, by the day's events, by the lifetime's accumulations. Practitioners who touch this for the first time often describe it as, "I noticed I was already aware." The recognition is not that something new arrived. The recognition is that what was already here has been here the whole time, and the small self had been standing in front of it the whole time. When the small self steps aside, even briefly, the witness becomes obvious. Not as a flash of light, not as a revelation, as the recognition that this awareness has been the ground under every experience this body has ever had. The failure mode for the silent witness is intellectualization. A practitioner reads about the witness in a book, builds a conceptual map of what the witness is supposed to be, and then mistakes the conceptual map for the recognition. The intellectualized witness produces flat, dry, lifeless spiritual conversation. The practitioner can describe the witness in technically correct language without ever having directly recognized it. The actual witness has a felt quality, even though it is not a sensation. It has a presence. It has a steadiness. A practitioner who has recognized the witness will sometimes go silent in conversation because the witness, when felt directly, removes the small self's hurry to speak. A practitioner who has only intellectualized the witness will keep talking about it because the small self is the one doing the talking. The library wants you to catch this distinction. The witness, recognized, makes the body quieter, not more articulate. This is the chamber, the seat, the lamp, the mirror, the silent witness. 4 objects, each one installed by a class of inner technique. Each technique suppressed, gated, or restricted because the practitioner the technique produced stood outside the institutional economy. The title of this video, Building Your God Self, names the work of installing all 4 objects until the chamber finishes itself and the one who has been sitting in the chamber the entire time becomes recognizable as you, as a soul in your most direct form. Here comes the rupture I want you to feel. Because we have been building, and the turn matters. The God Self is uncovered, not built. The 4 objects in the chamber were already there. The techniques remove the inputs that have been keeping the objects invisible. The techniques are excavations, not constructions. Hold that, because the institutional language has fogged this for centuries. The techniques excavate the God Self. The techniques remove what had been covering it. The seat was always there. The attention had just been pulled around by input so consistently that the seat could not be felt. The lamp was always lit. The field had just been so cluttered that the lamp could not be seen. The mirror was always reflective. The identification had just been so habitual that the mirror got mistaken for the content. The silent witness was always silent. The noise of the small self had just been so loud that the witness could not be heard. The techniques, then, are excavations. Discipline removal of input until the underlying architecture becomes visible. The God Self has been seated in this body since before this body was born, and the work is to clear the room enough that the God Self stops being hidden. This is why the realized masters of every tradition, when they finally spoke about what they had done, used such modest language. They said, "I recognized what I had always been." They said, "I noticed I was sitting in the chamber the whole time." The Mahasiddha stories that survive are full of this orientation. The Siddhas, after their realization, often went back to ordinary lives, fishing, blacksmithing, weaving, because the God Self requires no costume. The God Self can sit at a forge or in a fishing boat and remain the God Self. There is a story from the Naropa stream that captures this. A Tibetan yogi was sealed into a small retreat hut for 23 days, working the inner heat practice. By day 11, the inner fire had purified the channels enough that the lamp was clearly visible to him. By day 17, the mirror was reflecting cleanly. Every emotion that arose was held as weather without sweeping him. On day 22, in the deep silence of the morning, the silent witness recognized itself. The yogi sat in the chamber for the last day, doing nothing. When the seal on the retreat was broken on day 23, the yogi walked out, went to the river, washed his face, and returned to the kitchen of the monastery to help with the morning rice. No announcement, no proclamation. The other monks watched him for years afterward and could not figure out what had shifted. The yogi never told them. The chamber had finished itself in his body, and the God Self lived through him quietly for the rest of his life, doing kitchen work and minor temple duties, until he died at 87. The lineage carried his name forward as one of the great realized ones of his generation. He never claimed it. That is what the work looks like, lived. The chamber installed. The God Self uncovered. The life continuing in ordinary clothes. The realization quiet. The recognition steady. No display. The body as a finished chamber doing kitchen work. Now, the power test that the title is pointing at. Once the chamber is recognized, the practitioner faces a decision that the institutions try to prevent practitioners from ever facing. The decision is whether to use the recognition for self-aggrandizement or to let the recognition be quiet and ordinary. A practitioner who collapses at this point collapses because the small self, when it sees what is in the chamber, tries to claim the chamber as its own accomplishment. The small self says, "I did this. I built this. I am now a god." And in that moment, the small self has put itself on the seat, and the actual God Self, which was always seated there, gets covered up again by the costume of having become someone. The realized masters did not collapse here because they recognized that the recognition was not a personal accomplishment. The chamber was always there. The objects were always there. The work was the work of removing what had been hiding them. There is no I to claim the recognition. There is only the recognition recognizing itself. A practitioner who can sit in the finished chamber without becoming someone special, without telling anyone what happened, without taking a title, without putting a crown on, that practitioner is the one who is actually allowed to stay in the chamber. The ones who claim the chamber get evicted because the claim is the thing that closes the door. A practitioner who reaches the chamber the first time will, almost without exception, try the costume. The costume of being realized, the costume of being special, the costume of being chosen. The work is to keep walking back into the chamber until the costume gets boring, until the claim gets exhausting, until the small self gets tired of pretending the recognition belongs to it. When the small self gives up the claim, the chamber stays open, and the God Self, which was always there, gets to be lived. This is what the library means when we say Siddhi is a test, not a destination. The God Self carries the same test. The God Self tests whether the small self can dissolve into the recognition or whether the small self will wear the recognition as a costume. The test repeats. Every time the practitioner re-enters the chamber, the small self tries the costume one more time. Every time, the practitioner has to put the costume down again. Over years, the costume becomes uninteresting, and the recognition becomes the residence. Subscribe if you want the library to keep building teaching in this exact upgraded style. All right, back to it. Let me give you the broad strokes of how the work actually proceeds, so you can recognize whether what you are doing sits on the path or off the path. The library will not give you specific protocols. Protocols without the lineage transmission can hurt the body that receives them, and protocols without the floor underneath them can hurt even more. But the broad strokes belong to anyone who wants to do this work honestly. The seat gets built through stillness practices, body still, attention still, breath returning to a long, quiet rhythm. Daily, long, steady sessions, hours where nothing happens. The mind resists this for months. The body resists this for weeks. The resistance is the work. When the resistance quiets, the seat has been installed. The lamp gets built through inner attention practices, the attention turning back on itself, the awareness becoming aware of being aware. The inner heat work of the Naropa stream is one method, high intensity, requiring the seat to be very stable first. A more accessible method is the simple sustained attention on the central axis of the body, the line that runs from the base of the spine to the crown until the line begins to show its own quality of luminosity. This work is slow, slower than the seat. The lamp comes online over months and years, beyond days and weeks. The mirror gets built through discrimination practices, the practitioner watching content arise and refusing identification with it. The phrase the trika tradition uses is, "This is not me, this is happening in me," used as a lived recognition, not as an intellectual phrase. Repeatedly, across every category of content. Sensation, "This is happening in me." Emotion, "This is happening in me." Thought, "This is happening in me." Story, "This is happening in me." Over time, the practitioner stops being inside the content and starts being inside the awareness that the content is moving through. The mirror gets installed. The silent witness comes forward when the mirror has been in place long enough that the awareness recognizes its own ground. This is the work that the Mahasiddha stories point at, the moment of pointing out, where the master shows the practitioner what the practitioner has been doing the whole time, and the practitioner recognizes the silent witness directly. Without a master, this work proceeds through self-pointing, the practitioner asking themselves repeatedly, "Who is aware of the mirror?" until the question dissolves the looker into the looking, and the silent witness becomes the only thing left. The four objects in order. The chamber finished. The God Self recognized. This is the work. This is what got suppressed. This is what the institutions could not hold inside their structures. And this is what the library teaches in clean language, because the institutions have had 1,000 years and they have not done it well. And the practitioners listening to this right now deserve to hear the orientation without the institutional theater. A few warnings, because the library always gives you the safety teaching. First, this work can destabilize a body that has no steady foundation. If your sleep is wrecked, if your nervous system is dysregulated, if you are in active crisis, this is not the season for the chamber work. Stabilize the body first. Sleep, food, breath, daily rhythm. The chamber requires a stable instrument. Cross-reference anything related to your health with a qualified professional. Second, the work is slow. A teacher who claims all 4 objects can be installed in a weekend is lying or confused. The work takes years. The realized masters never rushed this work, and you should not either. The seat alone can take a year of daily practice. The lamp follows over the next year or 2. The mirror, with sustained discrimination work, comes online across the years after that. The silent witness arrives when the mirror has been in place long enough that the awareness recognizes itself. A full installation arc can take a decade or more of steady daily work. That is normal. That is the actual timeline. Anyone selling you faster is selling you costume. Third, the work requires honesty with yourself. The small self will pretend it has reached objects it has not actually reached. The mirror practice will start producing the recognition that the small self has been pretending for years about a lot of things. Let that come. Let it be ugly. Let it pass. Without the honesty, the chamber stays closed. Fourth, the work requires the right order. Seat first, then lamp, then mirror, then witness. A practitioner who skips ahead, who tries to install the witness without the mirror or the lamp without the seat, will collapse because the inner architecture requires the floors below to hold the weight of the floors above. The order is the prerequisite, separated from the institutional gating. Honor the order. Honor the body's pace. The chamber will install itself if the work is honest. Now let me talk about daily life for a practitioner who has installed the 4 objects. Because the title says build your God self, and you may be imagining what the God self looks like from the outside. The God self carries no outward look. The Nath Siddhas, after their realization, often looked like wandering beggars, like fishermen, like roadside drinkers. The Mahasiddhas, after their realization, worked as arrow makers, hunters, weavers, prostitutes, kings, gamblers, and merchants. The God self requires no costume because the recognition that has produced it has dissolved the small self's need to perform. What changes is the inner posture. The practitioner with the 4 objects installed walks through ordinary life with the seat steady underneath them, the lamp lit inside them, the mirror reflecting the day as it passes, and the silent witness aware of all of it while remaining none of it. From the outside, this looks like a person who is calm, who is present, who needs little, who does not get thrown by what would throw an unrecognized practitioner. Someone whose word carries weight even when they are speaking quietly. Someone whose presence in a room shifts the room without them trying to shift it. Someone who is, as the old phrase says, in the world but not of it, held lightly because the small self that would have been entangled has been recognized and let go. This is the God self in lived form. The lived God self is quieter than the muscular caricature that the spiritual marketplace likes to sell, more transparent, more available, more useful in the ordinary work of being a human being among other human beings. A teacher who sells you a muscular God self is selling you a costume. The recognition does not look like that. Walk away from the costume. Sit in the chamber. The realized masters across every tradition have agreed on this in the broad strokes, even with different vocabularies. The Nath Siddha, the Mahasiddha, the Trika master, the Tibetan yogi, the Hermetic adept, the Sufi friend of the divine, the desert ascetic, the Zen patriarch, when they speak about the recognized state, they speak in the same broad strokes. The small self has been seen through. The ground has been recognized. The work is now to live the recognition without making it into a story. And in the living, the chamber stays open, the God Self stays seated, and the day becomes a continuous transmission of what the chamber holds. A final note on the suppression, because the library wants you to walk away clear on this. The techniques got suppressed, gated, restricted, and in some cases burned out of the surviving record because the institutions could not hold the practitioner the techniques produced. The techniques themselves survived. The lineages survived. The Nath Siddhas, the Mahasiddhas, the Trika masters, the Naropa stream, all of these remain here, in fragments, in living teachers, in surviving texts, in oral transmission in the inner architecture of the bodies that still receive them. The bans slowed the work, gated the work, made the work harder to find. The work itself survived. The work has always been waiting, in the chamber, for anyone willing to do the four-object excavation. The chamber sits in this body. The chamber sits in every body. The objects are already there. The work is to sit. The work is to look. The work is to remove. The work is to recognize. 49 minutes a day, sitting in the room, doing the slow work of the four objects, will take you further than a lifetime of institutional study without ever sitting still. 49 minutes a day. 49 days at a time, until the chamber finishes itself and the one who has been sitting in it becomes the one you have always been. The Nath Siddha at the cave mouth was waiting for no one. He had finished the room. He was sitting in the seat. The lamp was lit. The mirror was clear. The silent witness was the only one home. And the cave mouth, the morning, the mountain, all of it was the chamber with no walls, because the chamber had become the world. The God Self carries no outward sign of being a God. The God Self looks like an empty seat finally being sat in by the one who was always meant to sit there. You, as the soul moving through this body, are the one. The seat has been waiting. The chamber has been waiting. The four objects have been waiting. The suppression was placed on the courage to sit in the seat, never on the seat itself. Sit. That is the teaching.